Non-parents of Reddit, why did you come to the realization kids weren't for you? When I realized I didn't want to continue the cycle of crappy parenting. My father was a crappy parent. I am far too like him, as much as I deny it. When I became a teacher, I teach elementary school and yes, I love my job, love working with kids and getting to know their families. I work in a wonderful school district and I come from parents who were teachers. My job just made me realize that I wouldn't be a good parent because I'm introverted, and I would lack the appropriate patience with my own children after spending all day with 20+ kids. Teaching is such an extroverted profession, and I really love the peace and quiet time I can spend inside my head without interruption. Helps me reboot. TLDR. I like kids but my own peace and quiet time is sacred. Also freedom. Love how no one replied to this in 4 hours and everyone just gets how you're being reasonable. I always knew I didn't want kids. I always suspected I would be too short-tempered and impatient. As I got older I didn't want to pass on medical issues. Gratefully I married a man who also didn't want children. I don't think I could possibly care for my child and give him or her the nurturing environment he or she deserves. I care too much about material wealth rather than my bloodline, and I don't want a child who gets money from me and nothing more. I know it sounds cold-hearted, but that's just who I am. At least you're honest, and think of all the waffle cakes and bacon you don't have to share. Sometimes I touch me niece's nose and she laughs hysterically. Sometimes she screams "Don't touch my nose" and cries. I can't deal with that. I fear getting trapped into a situation I can't get out of. Without kids I'm never chained to a job or living situation. I can burn it all down and start again anytime I want. I always need to feel like I have an out, and with kids I'd never really have one again. I agree with this. I see so many people living paycheck to paycheck and I couldn't deal with that stress. I don't have a very high paying job, but I also don't have very high living costs, which allows me to save. Someone on Reddit called it a frick you fund, so if you wanted to you could go frick you. I'm out of here at any point. When I was no longer a child, so when I hit high school, I realized I have no clue how to interact with children. I just don't know how to play with them or talk to them because it feels like I'm talking down to them or something. I can't do the babying thing other adults do. If you don't have the mental faculties of at least a 13-year-old you might as well be an alien to me. I don't dislike children. I just can't communicate with them. Relate to this so hard. Kids make me severely uncomfortable. I never wanted them, but it was solidified when my 13-year-old self watched my aunt's identity get stripped away when her first son was born. She didn't belong to herself anymore. She was simply cousin's mom. This is what I really dislike about it. You're not a person in your own right anymore. You're mummy. It's like you only exist as an extension of your child now, especially if it's in your Facebook name, say you're Jean Sarah's mummy doe or whatever, like it defines your existence. I haven't spent my life learning who I am to give up all agency to another being. I think I always knew. At no point have I ever thought a child would add value to my life, whereas I very frequently thought how much a child would take away. The decision was natural. Same here. I just don't want them. I feel complete as is. I don't have that thing that makes people yearn for kids. I am electively sterilized and never regretted it at all. But I do think I can't see a color that other people can. I don't miss that color at all. It's just interesting to me that I can't see it. It wasn't a realization so much as a lack of a calling. A lot of people have dreamed of having kids for their entire lives and are all about it, but I just never really had the desire to have kids. Having kids just seems like something to me that you have to want 100%. If you have even the slightest doubts, then you shouldn't do it. Acquaintance was saying how now that she was married, she was 37 at this point, that I suppose I should probably have kids with zero enthusiasm. I commented, well, don't have kids unless you really want to. She looked relieved and said thank you, I really don't. I just got out of college a year ago and am gainfully employed. My life basically just finally started, and I can't imagine shutting it down for 18-20+ years to raise a child. And my fiancé has zero interest in pregnancy. If I ever get the urge, I'll probably just adopt, and likely not an infant. I'll probably take in an older child or a teenager. It would probably never be a child-parent relationship and I wouldn't try to force that. Just try to give a safe space to grow and opportunities for their future. Mental illness and addiction runs in my family. I don't want to pass it on. My mum told me when she first got pregnant she thought about how fricked up her family is and decided she was going to do it right. She did her best but all the kids still wound up with a lot of problems. I basically just saw how they affected other people. Sure, the people are still happy, but I saw how they lost important parts of their lives to care for children. I saw the financial issues and the stress, the lack of sleep and time for friends and hobbies. Life just seems so short that, however selfish, I'd like to live it for myself. Children would indeed hold me back during the best years of my life. Sure, I'd probably find happiness in whatever path I chose, but if I have a choice, and I do, I'd rather not have the responsibility of breeding. There's enough kids in the world anyway. When my girlfriend's 6-year-old pushed my brand new current year motorcycle down the steep driveway destroying my engine casing and added more, I realized we can't have another one of these. At least now I can go home alone if I want. I can answer this as a teenager. We are annoying as frick. We're pretty much high-end pets. As a teenager, I freaking hate teenagers. They suck. This mythical have kids it's the greatest thing you'll ever do parent never showed up in my life. Most parents have told me it's only something you should do if you really want kids. If you don't have that urge consider yourself really lucky. They are hard work and will completely disrupt your life. Since I was 5, I hated playing with baby dolls and I told my parents, didn't want kids. They assured me I'd change my mind when I get older. I still don't want kids. Yup, pretty much. I remember I got gifted a doll with a bed once. I immediately threw out the doll and gently placed my favorite toy, a large plastic velociraptor, into the bed. Now that I'm an adult, I still like reptiles more than children. I grew up helping to take care of my siblings. Since I was the oldest and my father was out working most of the time I was basically their second dad as my parents put it, and I absolutely hated it. I lost a good chunk of my teenage years because I needed to be a responsible brother. Don't get me wrong, I love my siblings like nothing else, and my parents eventually did apologize for putting so much stress on me at a young age. I can still look at other kids with a smile. Heck, I even babysit willingly, but I never ever want to raise a kid again. I just can't do it. I can't even think about it without having flashbacks to when I was changing diapers at 1 AM on a school day as my parents slept since it was my turn. To those of you who want kids or are on the fence, please never dub your oldest the second mom dad. You will screw them up in the worst of ways. Take care of your kids because they are yours. Don't dump it on your oldest just because they have to do what you say. When I have money and a sports car, kids don't go 0-60 in 4.8 seconds. From what I've seen, some kids do 0-100 in the time it takes to say no. Let's see, I sleep in. I go on vacation pretty much whenever I want. I only have 2 people to cook for. Lots of free time and money. Nobody at my house shoots their pants or in the bed. Nobody at my house shoots their pants or in the bed. Yet. When I met my friend's nightmare of a child, I credit my cousin's ex-wife's daughter with being the deciding factor in my not having children. I was 8 and she was 3 and nearly 25 years later I have yet to meet a more spoiled, unpleasant child. She wants kids of her own now and I hope they're not as horrendous as she was. As a parent I have so much respect for people who realize that children aren't for them and don't fall to the societal pressure to procreate. There are far too many people who don't really want to have children but do because they think that's the next logical step after marriage. Unfortunately, when that happens it's always the children who end up paying for their parents' bad choice. It takes a lot of introspect and confidence to be able to say I'm too selfish to have children. I enjoy being able to spend my time how I wish and only have my spouse to consider. I don't mean selfish in a negative way. Being selfish in this instance is a good thing. Considering the needs of their would-be children and not wanting to fail them is admirable. My sister and I were the only grandchildren on both sides of the family. While it would have been nice to have some first cousins, I realized pretty quickly that my aunts and uncles all had more disposable income and fewer responsibilities than my parents. As I got older and eventually became an adult, I realized that although I love kids, the ones that can talk and go to the bathroom on their own, at least, I never felt that parental instinct. Luckily I found a fiancé that feels the same way. I feel like my nephew sees me and my brother this way, and I worry that it makes him feel like a burden on his parents. Just, pretty much as I kept getting older, I realized kids were not for me. I used to want a big family like 6 kids. Then every year that number kept dwindling down till I hit 0. I'm very maternal, so it was kind of a weird turnaround for me once I realized I didn't want the responsibility. Kids are great. I have nieces and nephews and I am close with one of my nephews. And I work with kids, so that's enough for me. This is weirdly comforting to me, because it sounds like my experience, but I'm right in prime childbearing time. I love kids, I'm generally very maternal. I just can't picture having my own. It's a strange thing. When I realized I liked puppies so much more. Puppies are the best all the time. It's never a bad day when you have a happy puppy. When I realized I would probably never have a mate. I'm 53. My uncle never had kids and met the love of his life in his late 50s early 60s. Still lots of time, bud. Don't give up. I love kids, but I think I'm allergic to the lifestyle that comes with it. If I see a nuclear family wrangling strollers and diaper bags, I legitimately feel trapped and like I can't breathe. Currently, not feeling I have enough emotional intelligence to raise a child. I know a lot of people grow up once they become parents. But the fact that I feel my day is ruined when the Wi-Fi goes out in my apartment makes me question what my patience level will be with something as permanent and unpredictable as raising a miniature human. As horrible as it sounds, the birth of my baby sister, there's a 12-year age difference between us. And for a variety of reasons I spent a lot of my teenage years babysitting and looking after her and dealing with all the dirty nappies and tantrums and stubbornness. She's 7 now, and has grown out of the worst of her brattiness, but she still has her moments. Many of them. I love her regardless, but it did make me realize that I have neither the patience nor the emotional capacity to care for a child for 18+ years. 7 billion is enough. Not having kids is the best way to reduce your carbon footprint, so is committing suicide. I can't even take care of myself. I'm not going to ruin a child's life by becoming a parent. Felt this way for as long as I can remember. I always found babies especially gross, smelly, useless, and no expensive. They all just look like a potato with arms to me. At least potatoes are useful. You can eat them. When I started to realize how many neglected and abused children there are, how many adults are recovering from trauma, and how much injustice there is in the world, why would I devote 2 decades of my life to breeding and rearing progeny when all that energy and all those resources could go toward supporting people who urgently need healing, empowerment and equity? Breeding in particular started to seem extremely self-centered and irresponsible, all the more as I began to observe how the lives of friends who made babies changed. Sure, not having kids prevents you from passing on congenital disorders and frees up your schedule for travel and self-reflection, but it also opens up huge swaths of time and energy for helping to make your community and the world a better place to live. When I realized that I would be passing down poor mental health genetics to a child, as well as possibly struggle more with my own mental health because of having a child. On another note, I'm quite terrified of the process of pregnancy and giving birth. I do not have a high enough pain tolerance for birth. Luckily I married someone who also doesn't want children, which I'm grateful for because I have a lot of student loan debt and children are extremely expensive. When I realized I was exactly like both my polar opposite parents. I love them and they love me, but they should not have had kids together. Easy. I was diagnosed bipolar. The slight chance that I could pass it on to my offspring scares the crap out of me. I was iffy on it for a long time, then a bunch of things piled up at once. Do you know how awful they are for the environment? I cannot handle short sleep stress. Getting a puppy has been hard. Kids are like that for a decade. They're expensive. and the ROI is questionable. I have ear problems that make loud sharp noises physically painful, like fall over clutching my face levels painful. Kids are not copacetic with that. I was a middle child. My older brother was expected to help more, but basically disowned us. Parents got divorced, and mom had no choice but to leave my toddler sister with me. I got to experience what being a single overworked mom is like from a very young age. As literally every person in my family has remarked time and time again, she also happens to be the most stubborn, negative, intense, and needy child of all 3 kids. Neither of the older kids can relate to her at all, and it's bizarre. I became terrified of the idea that I may ever have my own child like that. Hahaha. I wouldn't be able to handle someone like her for 18 plus years. She's lucky she's cute and has a good heart regardless. My great aunt talks like this. My great grandmother had 11 children, and my aunt, being one of the oldest ones, raised a lot of the younger ones, so she always says, I already raised 11 children. She was a little child raising children. I have never liked kids. I'm just so annoyed by children in general. I'm not maternal at all. Even my mom says this. Luckily, my husband doesn't want kids either. Now, due to some medical issues, children are not even an option. So, when I turned 30, not ever having a relationship, and realized how much I am used to being on my own and find it hard for me to have people so involved in my life. I am not over exaggerating when I say 5 years old. I remember sitting at the kitchen table throwing an absolute fit because the babysitter my mom hired to take care of me during the day had a baby, and I freaking hated it. And then it wasn't just that baby. I hated when any babies were around. I've never thought they're cute. I've never wanted one of my own. And like, no thanks Susan, I'd rather not hold your mushy blob of crapping madness. You wanna have kids, then that's great. Just keep them very, very far away from me. At all times. Always. Forever. Melodramatic as crap. But when I was a teenager I had the nihilistic realization that nothing matters and life is bulls and all the usual why was I born whiny crap. Then came the immediate, hedonistic realization that if life didn't matter, I could do whatever I wanted. But then followed the realization that I couldn't actually do whatever I wanted, because there are too many potential consequences to most selfish acts that would ruin my overall quality of life rather quickly and sometimes permanently. At some point I eventually started to think about what it would be like to be a parent. Everyone sort of feels that pull and wonders, oh man, I wonder what my kid would be like. I would be the best parent ever. But the answer was basically what I was going through. I'd bring another person into the world who never asked to be born and also suffered knowing that life was all meaningless. I at least felt a little guilty about that. Plus, after we all fade away into space dust, adding another child to the universe would not be a net positive in the grand scheme of things. No matter how romantically people talk about the joys and satisfaction of being a parent. We're all desperate to carve our names in the walls of eternity, but at some point we all become irrelevant or forgotten. Is there a need for more human life on Earth? Is there truly a need? So when I was in my 20s I got a vasectomy. Best decision I ever made. I felt a huge weight off my shoulders walking out of the clinic. No more existential dread over what I would have to live with if I created another life. I just accept that the path is closed and I move on with my life. Plus, I get to frick bareback all the time and I don't worry about crap, except for STDs, of course. So I try to stick to long-term monogamous relationships with people who also want to live stress-free, child-free, STD-free lives. Feels pretty good, man. This is the best thing I've read in a while. Thank you so much for putting it into words. I really wanted kids until about a year ago. 2 of my friends had kids and just observing their day-to-day lives as mothers depressed the crap out of me. It just kind of hit me that your life freaking stops when you have a kid. No sleep, no traveling, no time to do things you like. Your entire life revolves around this kid for at least 18-20 years. You need to be available 24/7. I want to travel and enjoy life with my spouse and friends, focus on my career, and feel like I can do anything I like, whenever I like, without being held back by another human being. Call me selfish, but I don't think I'd be fit to bring life into this world if I'm not happy or doing things that make me happy. When I realized that no matter how much I want to have kids, my physical disabilities would limit my ability to care for them properly and be able to give them opportunities I didn't have. My heart and head know not having kids is the right decision, but it's still heartbreaking for me. Since I got into hobbies that cost a lot of money, and if I have kids, I probably won't be able to buy the things I want. Growing up, my mom was horribly mentally ill, never recognized it herself though. She abused us up until she finally just left. I figure I have those genes. 1. I don't want to do that to my children, and 2. I don't want those genes passed on. Yes, I know there's medication. Yes, I know there's help. I'm not risking it. My dad said before she had kids she was fine. Never seemed more than the usual depression. Came out with multiple personality disorder, manic depression, bipolar, and I'm sure tons others. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.